mano buddhahankara cittani naham na cha shrotra jivhe na cha ghrana netre na cha vyoma bhumir na tejo na vayu chidananda rupa shivoham shivoham na cha prana sangyo na vai panchavayu nava sapta dhatur nava panchakosha navakpani padam nachopasthapayu chidananda rupa shivoham shivoham Nami dvesha ragau, nami lobha mohau, nami vaimado naiva matsarya bhavaha, na dharmo na chartho, na kamo na moksha chidananda rupa shivoham shivoham na punyam na papam na saukyam na dukham na mantro na tirtham na veda na yagya aham bhojanam naiva bhojyam na bhokta chidananda rupa shivoham shivoham nami mrityu shanka nami jati bhedaha pita naiva me naiva mata na janma na bandhur na mitram gurur naiva shishya chidananda rupa shivoham shivoham aham nirvikalpo nirakara rupo vibhutva cha sarvatra sarvendriyanam na cha sangatam na muktir na meya chidananda rupa shivoham shivoham chidananda rupa shivoham shivoham chidananda rupa shivoham shivoham
You know, this brings back memories for me. My father used to meditate, and my duty was, as a little kid, there was those long playing records. So I had to put it on, wait until the record played out, and those were the old ones where you had to manually change the records this side. I'd have to do that, wait till the side B played out, then take it off the record player, the turntable, and then put it back carefully and cover everything up and switch it off. And he would be in the next room meditating. But the result was I had to sit quietly and listen to the whole thing. And my favorite was this Chidananda Rupaha Shivoham Shivoham. So it's in the voice of a great singer, Dilip Kumar Roy, who was very closely associated with Sri Aurobindo, Dilip Kumar Roy. So his rendition of Mano Buddhyahankara Chittani Naham. And day after day, month after month, I would sit sort of entranced. And the result of that was that even when my dad was not around, when I had no school days, vacations, as all alone, I would put it on and sit and quietly listen to it. Chidananda Rupa Shivoham Shivo. What does it mean? Exactly that. Mano Buddhya Hankara Chittani Naham. You see? Mind, intellect, memory, ego, all of that is here. They are all functions of this thing. I am not any of these. Nacha shrotra jibhe, nacha ghrana netri, nor any of the 5 sense organs. The physical organs are part of this physical body, and the functions are in the mind. I am none of the senses also. Na vyoma, na vayu, na tejo, na apa. Is that it? Na cha vyoma, bhumi, na tejo, na vayu. So 5 and one more element. 4 elements are mentioned, one more you have to take it in. So the 5 elements which make up this body, also the subtle body, also the external world, I am none of them. If you ask why not, the arguments which Shankara gave here, they have attributes, size, shape, color, form, distinguishing, characterizing features. Whether it's the tree there, or the lake there, or the body here, or various thoughts, feelings, emotions, they all have characteristics. I have none, so I can't be them. What was the second thing he said? Bhuta vikara. They are all modifications of matter. Pasta. But I am not a modification of matter. This is matter. I am not material. I am that to which the matter appears. Third, drishyatvat. They are all experienced. I see, hear, smell, taste, touch the world. So too the body. And so too the thoughts. I don't see or smell or taste or touch them, but they are directly experienced by me in awareness. My thoughts, feelings, emotions. Because they are objects to me, drishya. I am drashta. They are seen. I am the seer. And therefore I cannot be any of them. But I do exist. If I am none of this, and I do exist, then what could I be? Clearly I am aware also. Not just a dead existence. Things are happening, I'm aware of it. So, Chidananda Rupaha Shivoham Shivoham. Shankaracharya sings there. Chit, consciousness. Ananda, we'll see. How is this bliss or fulfillment? Ananda. I am of the nature of I exist and consciousness and Ananda. Same thing. Satchit Ananda. This is also a great question to consider how existence and consciousness and fulfillment are exactly the same thing. Anyway, Chidananda Rupa Shivoham Shivoham. And he calls it Shiva. And in this book he called it Vishnu. Aham eva Vishnu. So therefore, Shiva is equal to Shankaracharya is equal to Vishnu. A is equal to B is equal to C. So A is equal to C. So Shiva is equal to Vishnu. And it's equal to this. This consciousness, you are, I am. All of us can claim exactly the same thing. And what's going on now, which we will carry on with, to understand the sentence tat tvam asi, that thou art, the first thing we have to do is find out tvam, you, this person. Who am I? That's what we are trying to find out. Then we'll look at tat, the entire universe. What is that? We'll find that out. And then we'll see both are the same actually. Now let us start with we have not started yet, but we are sort of finished before we started with that beautiful hymn. Sargasthiti pralaya hetumachintya shaktim. Sargasthiti pralaya hetumachintya shaktim. Vishveshwaram vidita vishwamananta murtim. Vishveshwaram vidita vishwamananta murtim. Nirmukta bandhanam apara sukhamburashim. Nirmukta bandhanam apara sukhamburashim. Shri Vallabham vimalabodhaghanam namami. Shri Vallabham vimalabodhaghanam namami. Yasya prasadadahameva Vishnu. Yasya prasadadahameva Vishnu. Mayeva sarvam parikalpitam cha. Mayeva sarvam parikalpitam cha. Itham vijanami sadatmarupam. Vijanami sadatmarupam. Tasyangri padmam pranatosmi nityam. Tasyangri padmam pranatosmi nityam. Now come to verse number 16. So from verse number 11 to 27, which is what we are doing, all of this is an inquiry into who am I, into tvam. Tat tvamasi, tvam. That you are, into you. So the first inquiry is into you, into understanding the meanings of the two words tat and tvam. Remember, what are you trying to do here? Understand the meaning of the sentence tat tvamasi. What does it refer to? In order to do that, we must understand the meanings of the words which constitute the sentence. What are the words? Tat and tvam. Asi is just the identity. So we are now trying to understand the meanings. First, meaning of tvam, I, you. That's what's going on. From 11 to 27. From 28 onwards, for a few verses, it will be tat, and then the identity of the two. 16. Verse number 16. Evam indriyadringnaham. Evam indriyadringnaham. Indriyani ti nischino. Indriyani ti nischino. Mano buddhis tatha prano. Mano buddhis tatha prano. Naham ityavadharaya. Naham ityavadharaya. Thus ascertain that you, the seer of the senses, are not the senses themselves, and know for certain that you are neither the mind, nor the intellect, nor the vital force. All right. The same process is continuing. He's taking another track. This is called Pancha Kosha Viveka. This is one procedure. These are all procedures to find out who I am. This is one procedure. In Sanskrit, this is called Prakriya. So one Prakriya, one procedure from the Taittiriya Upanishad. Taittiriya Upanishad, the second chapter, Brahmananda Valli. So there what you do is inquire into this. Who am I? Our immediate the reaction is, I am this. All right, let's investigate this. The first thing that you point out is the body. Am I the body? So the body is called the Annamaya. Annamaya literally means the modification of food. Maya, the Sanskrit mayat, means vikarartha, that means modification of, the modification, change. Food is assimilated, food and drink is assimilated and converted into this body. It's nothing more than pasta or whatever else we had now. This body. Am I this body? You pointed out, why am I considering it? Because you pointed it out. I am this. Let's see. Then we apply all the arguments which Shankaracharya gave. Does it have attributes? Yes, it does. But it cannot have attributes. I do not have attributes. I am that which is aware of attributes. I am nirguna. Body is saguna. Body has qualities. Therefore, I cannot be the body. Not only that, notice that the body changes from birth to babyhood to childhood to youth to middle age to old age, death. The body changes rapidly over this period of time. And I feel I am the same. I am the one who was in that baby's body, in the child's body, in the young person's body, middle-aged person's body. Now the body is old, and yet I feel the same. And remember, this is not a logical argument. It's more psychological in nature. It's more like a lawyer arguing a case, like trying to push you in a certain direction. Savikara nirvikara. I intuitively feel myself to be the same conscious entity experiencing this changing body. Changing, unchanging cannot be the same thing. First argument was, with attributes, without attributes. Saguna, nirguna cannot be the same thing. How can the same thing be saguna and nirguna at the same time? How can the same thing be changing and unchanging at the same time? Third argument, drashta and drishya. Shankaracharya gave another argument. We are not going into that. The modifications of matter, which I said, pasta, annamaya, the modification of matter. But I am not a modification of matter. Anyway, we are not going to that argument. Let's take the more powerful argument, drashta, drishya. The body is an object, seen, experienced. I am the seer, the experiencer. Why? Why cannot I not be the object? Look at your own experience. Everything appears to you, you experience it as an object. That's your experience. You never see yourself as an object. You see the body as an object. If the body is drishya, then I, the seer of the body, I must be different from it. Shankaracharya said, ghata drashta ghato bhinna in the 15th mantra, 15th shloka. Ghata drashta ghatad bhinna. In all ways, the seer of the pot is different from the pot. So I'm the seer of the body, the experience of the body. All of the five senses can objectify the body. I am that awareness which is aware of the body. But the body is, I'm not the thing which is I'm aware of. It's an object. It's seen. Then, for all of these reasons, I am not the physical body. The modification of food. That's the first step. And he has not mentioned it in the 16th verse because already 12, 13, 14, 15, he has talked about it. 16th verse, he starts deeper. He says, all right, I am not the body, but I am somewhere here. And point to yourself. Which one are you? Well, how about the sensory system? The powers of seeing, hearing, smelling, tasting, touching. Am I that? And the answer is no. Because even those are objects. You are aware of it. You're aware of the functioning of the eyes, of the ears, of the skin, and so on. The senses and their inputs are something that we are aware of. They keep changing. I am not changing. I am the one who was able to hear very clearly. Now I can't hear clearly. I need hearing aids. I am the one who was able to see very clearly. Now I can't see clearly. I need glasses. I am the same one. If I were the senses, I would have changed. But I am the one who experienced the senses in one state. I am the one who experiences the eyes are open, the eyes are closed. I am the one who experiences I can hear clearly, I can put earplugs in, not hear. Have I changed? No, I am the same one. So that which is seen, I am the seer of that. The seer and seen are different. That which is changes, I am the unchanging, the user or observer of those senses. Therefore, I cannot be the sensory system. Now, one might say that, look, I never seriously considered myself to be the sensory system. I might consider myself to be the body, but eyes and ears I never considered myself. But we strongly define ourselves by the functioning of the senses. A good deal of our existence as persons is because of sensory input. Think of I cannot see, I cannot hear, I cannot smell, I cannot taste, I cannot touch. Total sensory deprivation. Do sensory deprivation tanks? You'll feel your even personality beginning to disintegrate without inputs from the world outside. So senses are very important, and yet he says, I am not the senses. In Vedanta, the senses are considered to be part of two kinds of senses. The karma indriya. Karma indriya is the motor organs, and jnana indriya, the organs of knowledge. The motor organs are considered to be part of the prana. And this is pranamaya kosha. So in the Taittiriya Upanishad, where all this comes from, when you say I am not the body, look inside. What is subtler than the body? What is inside the body? Inside, I don't mean physically inside. Physically inside, if you look, you'll find what? More body. You'll find organs and flesh and blood. But inside, in terms of our experience of ourselves. Our first experience of ourselves here. Next experience, prana. Prana means the life forces, vitality, energy, hunger, satiety, health, illness. All of those are because of prana. And one of the tip of the prana, which I can notice immediately, is breathing. So breathing itself is not prana, it's because of prana. That's why in pranayama, control of the prana, what do you actually practically try to control? You start by trying to control the breath. But you're not actually interested only in the breath, the whole of the pranic system. In medicine, what do you try to do? Ayurveda, it's deeper form of medicine than physical medicine. Physical medicine, you try to treat the body. In Ayurveda, you try to treat the pranamaya kosha, which is where actually disease starts. Just by the way, in Ayurveda, it is understood disease doesn't even start in the pranamaya. They say something called vijnana dosha. It starts at the level of understanding. It starts with some serious misunderstanding about ourselves and the world. It starts with ignorance. Then it travels down to mind, feelings. And then it travels down to the pranic system. And then it manifests in the body as ill health. See how deep they go. Even ill health is rooted in wrong. But even our modern medicine is beginning to come around to that kind of, wrong understandings about our life, our body, lifestyle, environment. That is the cause of disease, rather than actually something just in the physical body. Anyway, anyo antaratma pranamaya. So you are clear that body is not the atma? No. Then the prana is the atma. Let us look inside. Is atma, self? Am I life itself? Am I life itself? But then consider the breath as an indicator of prana. Breathe in, breathe out. Notice. You can notice it. That I'm breathing in, you're aware of it. I'm breathing out, you're aware of it. So activity of prana, I am aware of the activity of prana. If I am aware of the activity of prana, I am the witness to the prana. The prana is an objective process going on. The whole of Buddhist mindfulness meditation. It hinges around your ability to observe the breath. If you can't observe the breath, then whole mindfulness meditation goes away. It uses the breath as an anchor. The point in mindfulness meditation is not to observe the breath, however. It is to calm the mind down. But you use the breath as an anchor. But Vedanta is interested in, so you can observe the breath, isn't it? Yes, you can. If you can observe the breath is an object. And prana, of which the breath is the most manifest, that is also an object. It changes. Breathing comes in, goes out. Hunger and thirst come, and then they are satisfied. Again they come. Health and illness come in and go out like tidal waves in this body. So, prana moves and changes. I am the same one who was hungry, now I am full. Who was tired, now I am energetic. Who was ill, now I am healthy. Same one. But prana has changed. It is something observable. It is something changeable. I am the observer. I am the unchanging. Then how can I be prana? So I am not prana. For pretty much the same reasons as I am not the body. Then let's go deeper. Upanishad says, Anyo antaratma manomaya. deeper than the prana, inwards to the prana, subtler than the prana, is mind. Thoughts, feelings, emotions, memories, words and images floating around. That's the mind. Am I the mind? Most people stop here. They think of themselves as mind. But am I the mind? Apply the same reasoning. Can you observe the mind? Is it thoughts, feelings, emotions, are they evident to you internally? Yes. In that case, thoughts, feelings, emotions are objects. Drishya. I am drashta. Without any effort, I am the drashta all the time. I am experiencing thoughts, feelings, emotions. That's all. In that case, thoughts, feelings, emotions, mind is the object. I am the subject. Is the seen. Mind is the seen. I am the seer. Drashta, the drishya. I am the drashta. And drashta and drishya can never be the same thing. Just as the seer of the pot is not the pot, the seer of the mind is not the mind. Second argument. Does the mind change? And you say, oh boy, does it change? From morning till afternoon till now, how much it has changed. Sleepy and then active, and then bored and then interested. Swami Vivekananda had given a very rousing call at once. It's often quoted. Arise, awake and sleep no more. The long night is past and the dawn is breaking. Like that, he has given very rousing, addressing his countrymen, addressing Indians. So in ashram, in school, in Deoghar, the little kids, the boys are so naughty, They have the evening study. You sit and study, and then there's always the danger is you doze off, you get sleepy. And the dinner bell, they have to go on studying until the dinner bell is rung. So when the bell rings, they are very happy. They can get up finally. And so one boy started in a sonorous voice, arise, awake, and sleep no more. The long night is long night of suffering is past and the dawn is breaking. That means the bell has rung. You can go and have food now. So, the mind is also observed. The mind is also changing. I am the observer, unchanging of the mind. And how can I be the mind? Then what am I? If I'm not the body, not the prana, not the mind, then you look inwards. Anyoantaratma vijnanamayaha. Look inwards. Inward to the mind, subtler than the mind. Inward it's very intuitive. No, there's no physical inward anymore. When you look in the mind, what is even closer to you than your own thoughts? There they make a division in the mind itself, the faculty of understanding, intellect, which we are all using, hopefully, to understand all this. Intellect, buddhi, that is called the vijnanamaya. So am I intellect? And you'll be surprised how many people actually, even if they don't say that I am intellect, intuitively they feel I am this intelligence, which is inhabiting a mind, a living body. I am an embodied intelligence. That's why many people feel if you get really artificial intelligence, so will you get other beings like us. Vedanta says no fear of that. Even artificial intelligence is also not you. Our intelligence itself is not you. Certainly not artificial intelligence. I had a professor who was very intelligent once. And he was like the embodiment of intelligence. And he would never understand what Vedanta is trying to say. Of course, I was not all that well equipped to tell him at that time, but we would argue about it sometimes. I was a student. And he would say, but you mean intelligence, isn't it? This consciousness means intelligence. When Vedanta says Chaitanya, Chit, it means intelligence. No. Intelligence is a capacity of the mind to understand. It's the feeling you get when you're at school, you were struggling with a math problem maybe, and suddenly you got it right. Aha, I get it now. That I get it. It's a function of the mind. That struggle which was not getting it earlier now gets it. That moment of clarity. Aham janami. I know it now. That is intellect. So am I the intellect? And remember, very important, because the intellect is what is doing all this right now. We are trying to use, but we are using the intellect. It's also a tool. It's an instrument. Does it change? Oh, it changes. It goes from not understanding to struggling to understand to getting it. And then getting confused again. I understood these things at one time. Now I don't remember any of that anymore. We all say this about hard-earned knowledge in school and university. It's gone now. I've told this story earlier, but it's good to tell it again here. So the story of one of the greatest Indian philosophers who lived in our time. I will not tell the name. If I know correctly, he's still alive, but very unwell at this time. And a monk whom I knew, who was not known to the public, Swami Mokshadanandaji, Ram Maharaj, we used to call him. So the story goes like this. Now, this Mokshadanandaji was a most wonderful Swami. He's one of the most wonderful monks I've ever met. Tremendously learned, Vedantin. But again, to call him Vedantin, I can still see his faint smile. You know, if you Swami, you are a great non-dualist, he would say, really? And you have understood that? Vastly learned, and yet always in the background, retiring, quiet. Very sweet. When I met him, he was already quite ill. He required oxygen 8 to 10 hours a day. But I never ever saw him unhappy. I never ever saw him grumbling, complaining about anything at all. He looked a little bit like a monastic Einstein, I think, with his long, frizzly white hair, twinkling eyes. He was short and fair. I remember the first time I met him. I had gone to Belur Math for the first time after becoming a novice, joining. And the monk in the ashram where I was had told me, go and meet these two monks there. Mokshadanandaji, he said, Ram Maharaj, and then one more Swami who is still alive, so I won't take the name. These two Swamis, you go and meet them. So I met this other Swami, then I went to meet Ram Maharaj. Somebody told me that he is in Arogya Bhavan, where the old or the sick, those who are sick, elderly, ill, the monks who are there. You go there. I went and I asked, where is Ram Maharaj? He said, they're down the corridor, you see those? There's some few old monks standing there and looking out into the garden. That's him. Now I went there, but I made a mistake. I didn't know who Ram Maharaj was. So I made pranams, bowed down to the person I thought was Ram Maharaj. And then that person just nodded, didn't say much. So I was a little disappointed. My focus was there. Then I saw this short, fair monk with a frizzly white hair. I bowed down to him also. He said, oh, where are you from? I said, from Deoghar. I said, I see. So those monks are in Deoghar, please convey my love to them. Now, love to them, and I have to ask, who are you? So I asked, all right, so whom shall I say has conveyed his blessings to you? I said, oh, tell them Ram Maharaj. I said, oh, you are Ram Maharaj. He said, no. I was taken aback. He said, my name is Ram, I am not Ram. Now that I was hooked. I thought, here was the man for me. And then he invited me back to his room, and then it sort of, I would say, struck up a friendship, because he was so far senior to me and I was just a newcomer. But every time I got an opportunity to go to him, I would go. Initially, I would go with questions, all sorts of difficult Vedantic questions. I realized that he was very revered he was not known to the world outside. Now he is known because of one book which he has written. It's a translation of Jivan Mukti Viveka, you will see, published from Advaita Ashram. And that also was done because another monk, Nishchalanandaji, he stuck with him for 20 years to get it published. Cajoled him and goaded him into translating it. But you can see in that book the depth of his scholarship and also the incisive nature of his understanding. Anyhow, so this is the story. Now, towards the end of their lives, this great philosopher once told me that, he was elderly already by that time, and I'm talking about nearly 20 years ago. So this philosopher said, he had a mild stroke, and he said to me, Swami, I have slowed down. I can't recall as much, and I'm not as quick to grasp as I was earlier. Now see, for a philosopher, for a man of knowledge, this is a disaster. It's like a rich person losing all his wealth, like an athlete losing his energy and health. So a man of knowledge losing memory and the quickness of his mind, slowing down. Then I was reminded of what Ram Maharaj had said to me before he passed away. I used to go to him regularly with questions. And towards the end of his life, he also became old. He was already old, quite feeble. And one day, almost the last time I went with some subtle question, I went to him. He was lying there in the bed, I still remember. And he thought. Usually, when you ask him a question, he would give it serious consideration. He would think for a while and then give you a very unique answer. What kind of answer he would give? I remember once I was given an assignment in the order which I didn't like. And all the other monks, they told me, oh, don't worry, it'll be over within a few months. Just do it like that, doesn't matter. Just do it. It'll be over within a few months. And Ram Maharaj told me, no. If you desire your own good, do it with all your heart. Do it well. Although you don't like it at all. Anyway, so I went to Ram Maharaj and I asked him some question, I've forgotten what. I remember he, as usual, closed his eyes and he thought and thought. And then he opened his eyes and said, it's gone. I can't recollect it anymore. And then in Bengali, his brilliant, I still remember his brilliant smile and his sparkling eyes, and he said in Bengali, O jak or kaj hoye gache. Let it go, its work is done. All the vast Vedantic scholarship. Why Vedanta? Grammar. Sanskrit grammar, the 4,000 sutras of Panini, I heard he could recite them from beginning to end and from end to beginning again. And that kind of scholarship, whole lifelong, is gone. Is gone. And are fading away. And he said, let it go. Its work is done. Now, see the contrast. If I am intellect, if I am memory, if I am mind, and more so prana and body, when these inevitably they will deteriorate over time, and I will feel I am running down. I am being affected by it. I am getting older, I am breaking down. And if you see clearly across the blue line into the purple, you will see the body and the mind and the intellect are slowing down. I am fine. All that learning, all right, I can't recover it anymore, fine. But what it all pointed to, that purple, I've got it now. He didn't say it's purple and it's blue, of course, to me. Vijnanamaya. Therefore, I am not the intellect. I am not the intellect. I was at a university, and this professor of mathematics who now teaches economics there, he had invited me to give a talk at the university. When I mentioned this in a talk, then after that we were walking down in a campus, I still remember, he said, Swami, this is what people in our department and all the departments in the university, they need to hear. And we become so attached to our understanding, to our publications, to our books. This becomes our identity. But inevitably, you get old. Younger and smarter people come up. And they write better books and they change the feeling. They change the whole field. And then people feel devastated. And that's the life of the mind. That's the life of the intellect. You feel devastated because that's where your existence is. Not in the body. Not in your possessions. But in your understanding, in your dominance of a particular field. Who was it? A great physicist, Niels Bohr, or I'm not sure who, one of the great physicists, he wrote an introduction, I think in quantum mechanics or something, to the next book of the latest generation. And he wrote in that, it is such a pleasure to see once, because it was written by one of his students, a PhD student who now became a professor, and he wrote this book. And he asked his professor to write an introduction, who was one of the greatest physicists of that age. He said, it's such a great pleasure to see one's children grow up into greatness and change the field to such an extent that you no longer understand it anymore. Yeah. So I'm writing an introduction to it, but I really don't understand this anymore. But it's great. And now see, I am not the intellect also. Push further beyond that. I'm still there, inward to the intellect. Who am I? you'll hit that blank. That is called the Anandamaya Kosha. Anyantaratma Anandamaya. And you dismiss that for the same reason. It's an object. It is also a kind of change because there is sattva, rajas, tamas there and it changes. It's dynamic. And in deep sleep it comes and you wake up and then... So there is a certain change there. And I'm not going to that. If you see the Upanishad, there are 3 kinds of ananda which come out of it. Priya, Moda, Pramoda, it's there. So all of those things happen. That also is an object to me. I am not that. Then who am I? See, the Panchakosha, the 5 sheets. Here is the Annamaya, the physical body, modification of food. Then there is the Pranamaya, which we have included all 3 here. Pranamaya, the pranic body. Then there is the Manomaya, the mind. Then there is the Vijnanamaya, the intellect. Then there is the Anandamaya, the causal body, which you experience in deep sleep. I am none of them for those reasons which I have said. And I begin to see that I am none of them. Now what am I? I still exist. And yet I am none of it. See, here is the big jump here because all of these are objects. But now what we are coming to is not an object anymore. It exists, but it's not an object. It doesn't exist as an it. Rather, it is more than an object. It is that to which all objects are presented, in whose light these objects shine. So I am the witness consciousness. The Upanishad itself is very clever at that point. We will, in a Vedanta class, we will say, oh, then I am that purple thing. I am not a blue thing, I am a purple thing. The Upanishad will say, you fool, you are not a thing, purple or blue. That was the whole point of the exercise. The danger at this point is we think, then I am nothing. Because everything that there is, I have seen that I am not it. Then there is nothing left. And the Upanishad goes down this track. The student asks the teacher, Asadev, he says that after Anandamaya Kosha in the Taittiriya Upanishad, Asanneva sabhavati, asadveda iti chet. If the student thinks, then I don't exist, then he will become non-existent, and yet you do exist. And whatever you could think of as a candidate, I am this, has been exhausted, it's not you. Then we are forced into the realization, I am this subject. Now Upanishad could have said it, you are the pure subject, you are pure consciousness, Atma, could have said it directly. But then when you say it that way, because of our objectifying tendency, we will start searching for Atma, searching for pure consciousness. While we are all the time choicelessly that pure consciousness. So it has to be intuitively caught. Rather than seen or like objectified, intuitively caught, I am this. The entire process here was negative. Neti, neti, not this, not this. Not this means, the first neti means all the 5 koshas. Not body, not prana, not mind, not intellect, not even the causal body, which is very, very subtle. Not. And then nothing. Then the second neti comes into play. Not that. Not that, nothing also. And then you have to catch it by what you are. If you trace it, you will find it. Hopefully. Not this, not this. Neti, neti. Shankaracharya, in another of his commentaries on the Aitariya Upanishad, he gives a rather humorous story of how this process works. He says, there was a man who was scolded by his guru, Amanushya-tvam. You're not a human being. That's what teachers in India, I hope they don't do it anymore, but they used to scold. You are not a human being. So he was very sad and he sat down and somebody came by and what happened? My guru told me that I am not a human being. So I'm very sad. And then the man tried to help him. He said, look, are you a rock? No, I'm not a rock. All right. Are you a plant? No, I'm not a plant or a tree. Are you an animal? No, I'm not an animal. And like this, he exhausted one by one whatever was amanushya, not human. So whatever you could think of as not human, now you have understood you are none of those things. I have understood. Then, if that man at that point, Shankaracharya says, at that point if that man says, yes, I have understood that I am not any of the non-human things. But then what am I? Then nobody can help him. And in this case, you could say that you are human. Because human also is an objective thing. But what he's pointing towards is this method. After having exhausted everything subjective, you try to trace it in your own experience. Okay, I am none of these things, but then what am I? You have to get it yourself. Then let us go on. So this is called Panchakosha Vichara. Number 17. Sanghatopi tatha naham, Sanghatopi tatha naham, iti drishya vilakshanam, iti drishya vilakshanam, drashtaram anumanena, drashtaram anumanena, nipunam sampradharaya. Nipunam sampradharaya. Convince yourself that you are also not the combination of the gross and the subtle bodies, and ascertain accurately by means of inference that you, the seer, are quite distinct from the seen. Okay. A question might come up here. Look, you are just playing with words. I never said I am the body apart from the mind, or the mind apart from just the mind, or just the senses, or just the prana, or just the intellect. I am all of this together. I am a system. I'm going to give sophisticated terms. I am a system, integrated system which has physical components, mental components, pranic components, which has these five levels of being. Together, all of it I am. That seems to be a convincing argument. Not in pieces. What you're doing is you're tricking me. You're taking body apart from everything else and showing that I'm not the body. But take body and mind and intellect and prana all together, and here I am. No. That's just lazy thinking. It's like saying, I have a set of things on the table. There is cutlery, there is rice, and there is dal, and gravy, and yogurt, and flowers on the table, and the table mat, all of that. And all of them are objects. Not me, not me, not me. All of them are non-conscious. And then I say, I put them all together, they becomes me. Of course not. You see, that you are oversimplifying, Swami. No. Look at it, a set of objects. Gross physical objects like this body, then the living body, then the thinking living body, then the understanding, thinking, feeling living body, right? Which wakes, dreams, and goes to sleep. Is it still not an object or a collection of objects? It is. From gross to subtler. Do you have a question here? Yes.
Pranam Swamiji, but I think it was in Aparokshanubhuti, there was this chariot example where we cannot point at the wheel and say, oh, is this the chariot? And the answer is no, we cannot just focus on each part of it. But everything put together, it is a chariot. So it doesn't seem to be all that.
No, there the thing was everything put together is the chariot only transactionally, but you can't point to a thing called the chariot. Similarly, that was an example used by the Buddhists to attack the concept of a self. It works here also. Same example. You put it all together, body, mind, life, intellect, and of course, the purple consciousness is there, whatever. Then it functions as a self. And transactionally you can call it a self. They call it Vyavaharika Jiva. In our Vedanta Sar it was said, the transactional self. Can you not call this person Sridhama? You can. Vedanta does not have an objection to it. But is that the reality about you? No, it is not. For practical purposes, we are persons. When you count the number of people here, you can count so many people. And they can interact. They can attend classes, go and eat food, take walks. All of these they can do. All the functions of persons they can do. But upon investigation, that's not the real you. The Buddhist will say there is no self in any of these. And Advaita agrees. There is no self in any of these. The self is actually distinct. The Buddhist will say no distinct self is also there. Apart from the parts in the chariot, do you find a chariot elsewhere? If that's so, I could say, bring your chariot or your vehicle into the ashram and park it inside the ashram. Just keep the parts outside. That won't work. Vedanta, it seems to be saying, see, here's a crucial distinction. Buddhism would say, apart from these objects, there is no such thing. Across the blue line, there is nothing. And these objects, there is no self in these objects also. Ultimately, Advaita will agree, but not right now. Right now, Advaita is separating. Remember, this is an analytic diagram. Ultimately what will happen? That's tomorrow, of course. Ultimately, Advaita will not say that there is this and this. This separation is just for the time being. It's provisional. This is called Sankhya. But later on, having understood this, then later we will show tomorrow that this appears as this. As I said at the very beginning, the real diagram would be that all of this is underneath. This is on the surface, underneath is this. But for the sake of appearance, for the sake of analysis, we have separated the two. And the Buddhist is right. The Buddhist also, especially in some schools, Tibetan Buddhism for example, they will say that there is an ultimate, they won't say ultimate reality because then that will run counter to their, they don't want to talk about ultimate realities. But they will say there is an ultimate nature, a Buddha nature of things. The ultimate nature of this, they will say terms like clear light of the void. Emptiness permeated by light. What does it mean? It is Sat and Chit basically. Yeah. I'll come to you. That's why I think the Buddhist analysis, especially the Tibetan Buddhist analysis, which I'm a little familiar with, I find it's actually useful for Vedanta. From the perspective of the Hindu schools, it may seem like an enemy, which is trying to deny the existence of Atma, of God. But from an Advaitic perspective, see, it's a good corrective. Why is it a good corrective? In the Advaitic path, or the Sankhyan path, however we may say that it's not an object, look, we have drawn it like an object. It's round, looks like a centipede, and it's on the left side of the board, and it has a purple color. So, and we refer to it continuously with words. So even if we say it's not an object, in some sense we are objectifying it, and that's the only way the mind will understand it. So we see it as something, but actually it isn't. Is it nothing? No. In the Buddhist path, what happens? Buddhism corrects this. The Buddhist analysis corrects this. It will show you there is no such thing as possible. Whereas, in the Buddhist path, the problem is, it can, the Buddha nature or the, what they call the Tathagata Garbha, Dharma, the multiple terms used for that. It may sound like nothing. Shunyam, empty. Nothing. They're talking about nothing, nihilistic. But that's not true also. That's unfair because they clearly say we are not talking about nothing. So in the Buddhist analysis, you have the sense of, it's a mistake, that you feel they're talking about ultimately it's all nothing. Either you feel confused or you feel they're talking about nothing. In the Advaitic analysis, Vedantic analysis, you feel that they are talking about something. But if you put them together, you realize it's not something, it's not nothing. I prefer to call it a no thing. Yeah. Yes.
I had a professor, graduate. Is this working? I had a professor in graduate school who went through a similar analysis of eliminating the body, the mind, the intellect, and he came to the conclusion that all we are is a point of consciousness, not a word about an ultimate reality. And it seems to me the only way to establish that there is something to the left is through realization, not through logic.
Logic can only point you that way. But what Advaita Vedanta, the interesting thing about it is all these techniques, like the 5 sheets, Panchakosha, or the waking, dreaming, deep sleep, which we will come to, they are not just logic. They are logic grounded in experience. As I was saying to somebody today, one beautiful thing about Advaita Vedanta is it's always about experience. Now tell me, notice it yourself, right now, in your experience, right now. Not mystical experience, God experience, Samadhi, just right now, the experience we are all having. This is the world. Are you experiencing this? You don't seem very sure. Here, it's around you. You see it, hear it, smell it, taste it, touch it, interact with it. World. And other people? And fish and dogs and whatnot? Yes, it's real. We are experiencing it. No doubt about it. The body? Less people are sure. Many are bodiless here. Yes, we are experiencing the body. My own body I can experience. And then when we look inside, introspect, first person experience, do I have feelings? Yes. Do I have memories? Yes. Do I have a sense of ego? Yes. Do I have desires? Yes. A personality? Yes. I'm experiencing this. And even this you can experience a deep sleep and moments of pause between thoughts, deep meditation, you can. Now, at which point have you stopped experiencing? At which point has it become theoretical? No point. Advaita Vedanta says, this is also not theoretical, this is also fully being experienced now. We would say, at this point it becomes theoretical. That limitless awareness, no, I don't experience. You do. And there it is, we have to use these procedures to inquire.
Yes, on this point, I have a question about, you mentioned before, reflected consciousness in the mind as distinct from pure consciousness. But since we are always a composite, like when we are appearing in this form with this body and mind, like in the mirror example, you can never actually see your own face. So in this understanding, can we experience what is the relationship between experiencing reflected consciousness or like chid bhasha and experiencing pure consciousness?
Yes.
Are
so
they the same?
That's a precise way of putting the question. So she's asking, what is the relationship between pure consciousness and the reflected consciousness? What is to put it in terms which we all use, we don't use terms like pure consciousness, reflected consciousness. This pure consciousness you're talking about and our conscious day-to-day experience. This is an experience, right? And this also, maybe it's an experience, we don't know. What is the relationship between them? What is the relationship between pure consciousness and this reflected consciousness? This reflected consciousness, according to Advaitic epistemology, is that which gives us the experience of everything. You see, it is the reflected consciousness. You see the tree, for example. Light is reflected from the trees, it goes into your eyes, and then somehow optic nerves and all to your brain center, then to the mind. At this point, whole neuroscience breaks down. They have no idea what happens here. Only up to here. In the mind, information, this visual information about the tree is there, and you get, I am seeing a tree. And this reflected consciousness makes it a conscious experience. I am seeing, I'm aware of a tree. Tree, body, eyes, brain, up to mind, it's all objective process. And then there's a flash of and conscious experience. So what's happening? What's the link? The link, very easy to understand. One good example is sunlight and moonlight. At night, everything in the world is lit up by moonlight. And yet we know moonlight is nothing but sunlight. It is the sun's light shining upon the moon, and because the earth has turned away from the sun, it's dark, but the same sunlight now reflected from the moon coming back to the earth illumines the earth at night. So you see everything, and you're asking the question, you see everything by moonlight, but what is the relationship between sunlight and moonlight? It is the same yet not the same. It's the same sunlight shining from the moon. We understand this when we study geography and astronomy, and then reflected back to the earth and illumines the earth at night. Yet there's a role of the moon as a reflector. Similarly, it is the same consciousness reflected of the mind. And then whatever, the rest of the process is all objective, nature. Whatever science says here, Vedanta would be okay with it. Then it is somehow produces a wave, a vritti. The culmination of objects, senses, body, brain, nervous system is to finally produce a spike in our mind. And that spike is illumined by the reflected consciousness, like moonlight. Notice, sunlight is relatively constant. Moonlight keeps changing with the phases of the moon. With the changes in the reflector, the amount of light and the kind of light that reaches us, it keeps changing. Similarly, this consciousness in the mind, it seems to undergo waking, dreaming, deep sleep as the mind changes. All the pure consciousness is constant. This must be on. Right? Or you can use this.
Sorry. So in Buddhism, we often say, take the backward step and shine the light inward. So as a jiva, when we are shining the light inward, the light is a little confused. But anyway, are we seeing, as a jiva, can we only see moonlight, or is what we are looking for the sun, the pure sun?
Ah, yes.
What is the realization? Right. Is it seeing the moonlight, or is it the sun?
Now you're asking about the epistemology of realization, of enlightenment. I will not go into that, but I will refer you to, it's fully explained in a book called the Vedanta Sara. Towards the end of that, there's a whole talk on that. What exactly happens during enlightenment, which is in Brahma-jnana or Brahmākara Vritti. What is the role? Notice, here there is some role played by the mind to see some object externally, and some role played by the reflected consciousness. And of course, the original consciousness must be there. Brahman must be there. The sun must be there anyway. To see anything at night, you need that object, you need the moon, you need the moon to be in the right position to reflect sunlight, but you need the sun also, always. Without that, nothing happens. So, in day-to-day experience, I'll tell you very briefly, and then for details you can look it up. In day-to-day experience, according to Vedanta, what's happening? Pure consciousness, shining on the mind as reflected consciousness, illumines the various vrittis which come up. How do you know anything? To know this book, let me make it even more clear. To see this book, I have to do some activity. I have to focus my eyes on this. If it's here, I can't see it. I have to bring it here, focus my eyes on this. And then the visual information will go somehow to the mind. You say, you are ignorant, Swami, you don't know how? Nobody knows. I'm telling you, forget Atman, Brahman, consciousness. Just how do we see anything? First, not just the physical part of it. Physical part of it is well studied. But the conscious experience of seeing anything at all, hearing anything at all in our lives, not at all understood. I'm making this bold claim. No doctor, physiologist, biologist, neuroscientist in the world has the slightest clue how it's going on here. When it comes to up to the neurons, lot is known. After that, nothing. We're just swimming in the dark here. So, it comes to the mind as a vritti. Why do you say that? We experience it. Book akara vritti. And then that vritti is lit up by the ever-present reflection of consciousness there. And then I get a flash of, I experience this book. Part of it is world, eyes, mind, and a part of it is the reflected consciousness. That moment of reflected consciousness illumining the vritti is called knowledge. Now you need both. Reflected consciousness is always there, but there are so many things I don't know. I can put it here and I don't know it. I can take it out, create a vritti in my mind. Oh, this book is Vakya Vritti. All right. Yeah. And then the already existing reflected consciousness illumined it, and I see the book, this knowledge. This is how all knowledge, first person experience, takes place according to Vedanta. But what happens in enlightenment, in Brahmajnana, here the object is not an object. Yeah. Here is, you are trying to find out, who am I? So to explain that again, they use a very nice example. It is the example of the solar eclipse. So in normal knowledge, the example used is moonlight at night. The earth is in darkness, the moon reflects sunlight, moonlight illumines objects in darkness. One at a time, narrowly, not everything at the same time. But in solar eclipse, what happens? The moon comes in between the earth and the sun. Now, the light which falls from the sun to the moon is now reflected back to the sun. All right? The earth passes into darkness. So that is actually what shows what happens in Nirvikalpa Samadhi. Now, will we say that the moonlight is now illumining the sun? That is foolish. The sun is shining forth with a light 1,000,000 times brighter than the moon. Not only that, the moonlight being reflected from the moon back to the sun is also the sun's light. Now that is called Brahmajnana. That consciousness which illumines everything through the medium of the reflected consciousness. Now when you create a vritti, how do you create that vritti? There are two ways. One is by this method, by constantly investigating this who am I, this methodology, trying to hook it to your experience and stepping back and trying to go beyond the blue line into the purple. Trying. What are you doing? You're creating vrittis. About what? About the Atman. And it's not proper. It's not in Hindi they say, theek baithna. It doesn't fall into place. But a time will come when it will fall into place, instantaneously. And it will be done at that point. That point, what will happen is, the vritti will be in the mind. The vritti will be, it's all right. The vritti will be about the Atman. It will be about the Atman. But, it will be a kind of an understanding about the Atman. Then what will happen is, the reflected consciousness there will illumine that vritti, but it's not that the reflected consciousness is giving you knowledge of the Atman. You'll begin to realize the mind and everything else is flooded with the light of the Atman. It is one consciousness everywhere. And that is known through that consciousness only. It's no longer the reflected light of the moon which is illumining the sun. It's no longer the reflected consciousness in the mind which is illumining an object. That's what will happen. And technically all of this, very precisely it is put in this way. For Brahmajnana, for knowledge of Brahman, for enlightenment, vritti vyapti is necessary, phala vyapti is not necessary. What does this mean? A formation in the mind, I am Brahman, is necessary. But the reflected consciousness to illuminate that formation is not necessary. Because what you're thinking about, Brahman, is shining forth with all the light that there is in the world. For knowing things in the world, vritti vyapti, phala vyapti are both necessary. Vritti vyapti means the knowledge, this is a book, this is vritti. And phala vyapti means reflected consciousness illumining that vritti. Both together give me the knowledge of, experience of this book. But in case of enlightenment, only the vritti vyapti is necessary. It will remove the ignorance about Brahman. But the experience, I am Brahman, that is because of Brahman, not because of the reflected consciousness. That is the Brahmākara Vritti. That is the epistemology of Brahmākara Vritti.
So, from a practice point of view, if we just taking resort to the reflected consciousness, we keep practicing this. I'm doing this vichara. viveka vichara of this, and then that creates a vritti.
Yes.
I mean, that's something not we control really. It just happens.
Yes, it happens. Now here we are entering a whole realm. For example, how do you see anything? It just happens. You know how it happens? You deploy the instruments of knowledge, then knowledge will inevitably happen. If there is an object, the room is well lit, and I focus my eyes on it, and my mind is attentive, I am bound to see this object. Because I am using the instruments of knowledge. Mind plus instrument of knowledge. What instrument of knowledge? Eyes. Plus the object gives me knowledge of the object. Of course, light must be there, everything must be functioning well. Mind plus ears. Mind means attentive mind. Plus ears gives me knowledge of the words which are coming now. So mind plus instrument of knowledge will give you the knowledge of what you want to know. Now mind plus what instrument of knowledge will give me knowledge, I am Brahman. What is the instrument of knowledge here? So Vedanta says the instrument of knowledge here is Upanishad, specifically Mahāvākyas. When everything is understood from this, then when you hear the Mahāvākyas, especially from, there's some unknown factor there, especially from a guru who is enlightened himself. If you hear it from one who knows, then something clicks in your mind. That instrument of knowledge works. It's called pramana. And it gives rise to brahmākara vritti.
Shabda pramana.
Shabda pramana. You are the 10th in the 10th man story. That is the pramana. That's the instrument of knowledge. Somebody has to come. You remember the story, the 10th man? So you are the 10th. Dashamastvamasi. Somebody has to tell you that. And everything must be right for you to click. Oh, I am the 10th. The sheep who thought, the lion who thought he was a sheep. Then somebody has to come and tell that lion sheep that you are not sheep, you are a lion. And it will click. So that statement is the instrument of knowledge. There is a huge bit of argument here called Shabda Parokṣavāda. That is, directly from the statement of the teacher, one gets enlightenment. This is the methodology of this. That's why, it's a direct pointing to our reality. Okay, let me go ahead. All right, I'm just going to read through a few verses. All of them are pointing to you, the witness consciousness. But then I'll go to a couple of verses which I'm interested in touching on today, so that we can wrap up. You wanted to ask? Just hold. Okay. All right.
So does it mean that we can't do anything about it? Like it happens. So basically...
Oh, you can. Just like, can you do something to see the book? Yes, I have to look at it. That's it. You have the instrument of knowledge. Use it, you will get knowledge. This is the instrument of knowledge, Vakya Vritti. Use it, tattvamasi, you will get knowledge.
So we can keep practicing that
Brahmākara Vritti. Yeah. It should arise. Now it is not arising. So there's a lot of discussion on this, but I'll just touch upon it before we go on. It is not arising. It is not arising. Why is it not arising? Then there is some problem. There's no problem with Upanishad. Tattvamasi has no problem. Yeah. So suppose it's like this. Here is a book. Here are my eyes. And the book is in front of me. The eyes are open. And yet I'm not seeing it. What's wrong? Mind is not paying attention. No light is there. Some kind of defect is there. I am sitting here. The eyes wide open, listening. What did you understand? Nothing. One teacher would say humorously, you are here, but you do not hear. So there is a problem somewhere. Now, in day-to-day objects, there might be a problem. Maybe the light is dark, you can't see the object at night. Or maybe the eyes are not functioning well, you need glasses. Or maybe the mind is not attentive. There can be problem everywhere. But in the case of Brahma-jnana, what is the object of... Object means so-called. What is it that you want to know? Brahman. There can't be any defect. By definition, Brahman is free of all defects. What is the instrument of knowledge? Upanishad. How dare you say there's a defect in the Upanishad? There's no defect in the Upanishad. Tattvamasi is defect-free. So the only possible problem may be in the knower, in me. The mind which is trying to use tattvamasi to realize I am Brahman. So the problem is in the mind. And that problem has to be corrected. And that problem can be corrected depending on what defect it is. It can require karma yoga, it can require bhakti yoga, it can require dhyana yoga. All of these are methods of preparing the mind so that it clicks. That's why Advaita Vedanta will sort of appropriate all the other yogas and use it as a basis for preparation. Advaita Vedanta says more precisely there are two kinds of problems which can happen. One is the so-called, I don't get it. What are you talking about? That is called asambhavana, impossibility problem. This just isn't true. What is this? So how do you solve this problem? You hear again. Come to more retreats, read this book, listen to the YouTube talks, ask questions, until the impossibility problem goes away and you say, oh, I get it. It's right. Then the second problem will come. I get it. This is correct. It still is not real to me. I still continue to behave just like this old person. I understand it, but it's still not coming out as like vividly real for me. Then that is called the viparita bhavana. Viparita bhavana means contrary tendencies. I still continue to behave like on this side of the blue line, body-mind. Even though I realize I am that purple thing on the other side of the blue line, I still continue to behave like that. Then what is the correction for this? Nididhyasana, Vedantic meditation. You have understood it, and you have understood it clearly. Then stay with it until it becomes a living reality for you, until those contrary tendencies are corrected. So these are the two advanced problems, and these are the two advanced ways. Manana, Nididhyasana. So the original theory was Shabda Parokshavada. Directly from the instruction by the teacher, you should become enlightened. So by Shravana, hearing, Shravanateva Jnanam, they go so far as to say, by hearing, come to the class, listen carefully, you'll become enlightened and walk away from it forever. You don't need any more retreats. But not happening. Then two problems. Solution, Manana and Nididhyasana. But that's really sort of top of the mountain kind of. Before that, Bhakti Yoga, Karma Yoga, Raja Yoga, all those are necessary for strengthening and focusing, purifying the mind. All right. All of this is grace. The question was, is there any role for grace? The Avadhuta Gita starts with Ishvara Anugraha Deva Pumsam Advaita Vasana. An interest in non-dual realization is the sign of grace of God. And then in the whole of the Avadhuta Gita, he never mentions God again. He's got the grace of God and he goes on. Who am I? Once I was in the Himalayas in search of strictly non-dual monks. So I found 2 or 3. There was one I found, somebody told me, his name was Nirvikalpananda, so you can imagine. And they told me, so you are from Ramakrishna Mission and also, don't mention God, Thakur, Ma, Swamiji, Bhakti, he'll scold you. So he's so much into Advaita, non-dualism. So I went to him, and the first thing he told me was when he found that I'm interested in non-duality, was Ishvara Anugraha Deva Pumsam Advaita Vasana. By the special grace of God, young man, you have an interest in non-dual realization. Then don't ask me what happened. After that, it was all downhill. You have to go with offerings for a monk when you go. So I had bought some biscuits from a shop near the temple in Haridwar. Not Haridwar. This was in Swargashram in Rishikesh. So I got some biscuits. I went there. He was diabetic. So that didn't work out. Then it was all sort of downhill after that. Mostly it seemed a little like a bitter old man. But so it was not very useful. Anyway. Now there are a couple of verses. Let me jump ahead. Which very powerful verses. 2 verses which are very subtle and powerful. I'll touch upon them and wrap up this session. That is verse number 21 and then verses number 24 and 25. 21 is interesting. Let us chant together. Verse number 21. I've skipped two or three verses in between. They all just tell you that you are pure consciousness. Don't worry. There's nothing more. All of this is just, who am I? You are witness consciousness. That's all. But 21 is a very subtle insight. It's wonderful actually. Agaman me manon yatra. Agaman me manon yatra. Sampratam cha sthiri kritam. Sampratam cha sthiri kritam. Evam yo vetti dhi vrittim. Evam yo vetti dhi vrittim. Soham ityavadharaya. Soham ityavadharaya. Have no doubt about the fact that you are not other than the consciousness which is the self-illumining the modifications of the mind, such as my mind went elsewhere but it is now brought to rest. Okay. But this is something that meditators will often ask. In Advaita Vedanta, one question which comes at an advanced stage is, I get it, but I slip away from it. I got it, but it's gone now. Or I get it in a retreat, or I get it in deep meditation. I know I'm the unflickering light of awareness. But when I'm away from the retreat, or I'm in the midst of the world, it's gone. It's just nowhere there. I'm totally mixed up with the world. And then when I come back and I listen to YouTube lecture or read a book or sit quietly in meditation, it's back again. I am the witness consciousness. What do you do for that? There are two solutions. The advanced solution, the direct solution is given here. You know what is the solution? So you got it. It was an experience that I have. Mind is stilled. I am the observer of the mind. Yes. And there was a time when it was totally lost. You were busy talking with people, doing things, and it was just gone. That was also an experience. And then you tried again, and the mind calmed down, and you are the witness consciousness of the mind. That's also an experience. Aren't all these experiences to the same one you? And that one you, which experienced, which saw that my mind is still, I am the witness consciousness. And that one which experienced everything is mixed up and I'm active and busy in the world. Isn't it the same you? Or did two different people have this experience? You are the same one, same Atman. Was there a change in that Atman? Did something happen to that Atman? Was it not that constant light which illumined the peaceful, meditative mind which was holding on to the Vedantic truth? Aham, brahmāsmi, chidananda, rupa, shivoham. That one constant light. Also, when the mind was busy, talking with people, buying and selling in the world, interacting with people, happy, upset, sleepy, same consciousness. You are that same consciousness. When the mind is brought back under control again talks about Vedanta, thinks about Vedanta, you are the same consciousness. At no point did you deviate from your nature. This idea, this feeling, I had it, it slipped away. Who gave it? Clearly that was also an experience. I had it, it slipped away. Who is complaining here? The mind. Not the Atman. It's the mind. If you use this is a doorway to stabilizing your enlightenment. If you use this, you will realize once you make the breakthrough, at no point are you, at any time, even before the breakthrough, at no point are you ever away from yourself as the Atman, the ever peaceful, the ever shining self, ever trouble-free. That you always are. Even when the mind is calm, even when the mind is troubled, and you again calm the mind down. Now what does it say? My mind went out elsewhere, away from my object of meditation. Disturbed. Sampratam cha sthirikritam. Just now I have been able to calm it down. Everybody has this experience in meditation. Daniel Goleman, in his book Focus, he gives the neuroscience of meditation. He says meditation has these 4 stages. And just now we are beginning to find corroborated with neuroscience. There are certain parts of our brain which are connected with, which light up when you are constantly giving attention. There is another part of the brain which lights up when a distraction sets in. There is a third part of the brain which lights up when your mind is wandering from one thing to another. There is another set of neurons which lights up when you recognize that the mind is wandering. And there is another set of neurons which lights up when you bring the mind back to the object of meditation. There is direct correspondence between the stages of meditation: focus, distraction, mind wandering, recognition, renewed focus. 5 stages, and there are slightly different areas, it seems, of the brain which light up when these stages are going through. Advaita Vedanta says, here the teacher is saying, you, the light of consciousness, are constant. You are constant. No matter what the mind is going through. It is the mind which went through. It says, my mind wandered. I recognized it, and now I finally brought it under control. That constant light to which all of this is appearing, he says, soham ityavadharaya. Understand that I am that. Once you have understood, no matter what the mind does, you know I'm always constantly available to myself. I like that phrase, never not here. So always here. But always here is like a positive way of putting it. Never not here means never absent. At any point when you want it, you can recall it. When do you want it? Especially in times of trouble. So this is the most advanced way of pointing out. Even in the midst of distraction, this distraction is a doorway to realizing that you are not the mind. Otherwise, what happens at an advanced stage in Vedanta is, once you get clarity, the next thing is, wow, this is great, I want to hold on to it. Who is saying that? The mind, that rascal which has wandered around centuries and lifetimes doing all other things. Now that rascal is saying, this is great, I want to hold on to it. Another trap. You say, my dear mind, you can't hold on to it. You are the object for that. You cannot hold on to it. You just got some clarity just now. You are not the mind. I know one sadhu in Uttarakhand, very great, one of the greatest non-dual teachers I have seen, very great sadhu, he passed away recently. In his presence, a young monk very excitedly was saying, I have to hold on to that aham brahmāsmi. Usko to pakad ke rakhna chahiye. I should at least hold on to I am Brahman. I should at least hold on to that. And this teacher, he said that usi ko to nahi pakad ke rakhna chahiye. That's exactly what you must not hold on to. How strange. I am Brahman, I should not hold on to this. That's what you must not hold on to. That's what the mind is doing. Then it will become a renewed struggle of I am Brahman, I am Brahman. What happened? Oh, I missed it. Oh God, I am Brahman. No. That initial breakthrough is a momentary breakthrough. That's all you need if you really have it. It's not a question of holding on to it. After that, it will be constantly available to you effortlessly so. How much do you practice? How much do you have to practice? I am Swami, I am Swami, I am Swami. Don't disturb me, I'm meditation on myself. No, I don't need to. Anytime anybody asks me, I'm Swami, yes. It's always available to me, but not that I'm thinking about it all the time. It's not an object of the mind. It's a very subtle, slightly humorous way of putting it. See, what will the meditation master tell you? Yes, this is what you must do. Mind wandered. Bring the mind back. Focus it on the object of meditation. What he is telling you here is, that one which noticed the mind wandering, that one which brought the mind back, in whose light the mind was brought back to the object of meditation. That one is constant and you are that. It's so freeing. If you don't get this, then the next level instruction is Vedantic meditation. All right. Come back and hold on to this. There are multiple ways of practicing Vedantic meditation to stay with it. Nididhyasana is there. If you get this, even Nididhyasana you don't need. In an instant you are back there. Then the 24th and 25th, let me just touch upon it. Actually, you've run out of time. You can give up 5 minutes of tea time. Yes. Oh, there's a question. Then these two, I will do tomorrow then. These 24, question we can take up now. 24 and 25 is Ananda. We have been talking about consciousness, but what about Ananda? How is this consciousness Ananda? Bliss. So that is 24 and 25. But anyway, we'll talk about it tomorrow. We'll take the questions now.
So Swami, from the opening prayer and this whole session, we realized that the mind and the intellect can only help us with neti. I am not this, and that in itself is a huge journey for all of us, because we are not there. We are the more progress we make on that, the more our minds can calm down. It's making the leap to the boundary, getting to the boundary, how you get over the boundary. And you mentioned it's the Mahāvākyas, that the realization of those. My question is, do you need a guru for that? Because you can read them, we are all reading them. Books are just, again, objects, right? Language is just an object. Even the book that we are reading is really an object that's been put together and is being transmitted to us through you right now. But do we need a guru for the actual realization? Because it has to be a realized soul or a person that has realized that can actually get us to make that leap, or can we do it on our own?
On our own is difficult and not recommended. You'll see at the end of this book, he says, how is it accomplished? He says, by this text taught by a guru, Shruti and Acharya. Shruti means the text of the Upanishads, and taught and transmitted by a teacher. Exactly what's happening here. So, now does the teacher have to be enlightened, Jivan Mukta? Well, it's great if you get such a teacher, but for the rest of us, we have to make do with what we have got. And the Upanishad also doesn't say exactly that the person has to be fully enlightened. It says, Shrotriya Brahmanishta Akamahata. Shrotriya means well-versed in the Advaitic tradition. Brahmanishta means the centered in Brahman. Now, as a realization, aham brahmāsmi, that's best. Or is the whole life dedicated to Brahman? It's a whole life of spiritual seeking, spiritually centered life. And akamahata does not have any other extraneous desire which he is trying to fulfill by this teacher-student relationship. There should not be any desire for money, power, cult status. People use this for getting power. So none of that, or politics, none of that. If these three conditions are satisfied, that person is a fit acharya. And then the text is there, and the student should be ready.
But Swami, in that case, how would we know that the Mahāvākya is true?
You don't have to worry about it. You have to do two things. Start off by thinking that it's true. That's called the Shraddha. What kind of Shraddha? It's just enough, which, as I say, you go to a university to learn and you have this attitude that what the books are telling me, there is truth in that. What the teacher is telling me, there is truth in that. But I don't get it yet. But I have hope of persevering, holding on with knowing that this is true. At one point, I don't have to believe it anymore. I'll see for myself. I'll understand the physics of it or the maths of it. Then I know it's true. If I start off by thinking that the teacher is a liar and the textbooks are fake news, then I will not be able to proceed. So that much faith is required. As against, say, a dualistic path of devotion where the faith required is total from the very beginning till death and beyond. Until, by God's grace, if one gets that experience where it becomes clear. That also can work, but that's a different kind of faith. That operates entirely on faith. There's nothing else there. Without that, the path of devotion will not work. But the path of yoga or path of Advaita Vedanta, Jnana, it requires Shraddha. But that much, like an operational Shraddha.
Thank you, Swami.
Yeah. Yes, there's a question here.
Don't the paths converge?
Yeah, that's outside our syllabus now, but they do. And that's shown in the lives of people like Adi Shankaracharya, Swami Vivekananda, for example. We all know them as great Vedantins, but they are also meeting points of devotion, bhakti and dhyana and karma. All the great Vedantis, most of them, whom you might have met, and they also are dynamic, they're also loving, they are also meditative. So the paths do converge. Om Shanti 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 Harihi Om Tat Sat Shri Ram Krishna Arpanamastu. Very good.